I'm Jamie Frakes, Learning and Development Coordinator here at RF Central Office, and I'm going to be your host for today for the first Demo and Discuss session entitled A Plan for Succession. We're expecting about 100 people have registered for this WebEx today, so I just want to go over a couple of things, housekeeping things. Number one, this session is being recorded. Recording has already begun. So for that reason, I have muted everyone's line just so that we don't get a bunch of background noise and whatnot. However, you can unmute yourself by simply pressing #5 if you need to ask a question, or you can also use the chat feature that's on the right-hand side of the screen you should be able to see right now. You should see our open presentation right now, A Plan for Succession, and on the right-hand side, the chat feature, which you can type in questions and we'll monitor that throughout the session. Meanwhile, I'll keep people muted other than the presenter. Please keep in mind also that while you're on this call, should you place us on hold and you're not muted, everyone will hear your hold music. So if you need to take another call, we encourage you to just simply hang up and dial back in. We have the chimes turned off, so you're not going to disrupt the presentation at all if you do that. So that being said, our presenter today is the Vice President of HR here at Central Office. That is Kathleen Caggiano-Siino. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Kathleen.
Thank you, Jamie, and welcome everybody. Shout out to Jenna Lear, who had her baby over the weekend, and so she's not here to co-present with me, but as Jamie said, this is our first Demo and Discuss. This is part of a comprehensive learning and development plan that many of you helped put together. We have upcoming webinars, and like Jamie said, this will be recorded so that all people in our system that want to view this afterwards are welcome to. I also want to just let you know that of the 106 people we have on the call, we have many operation managers, many people that are in sponsored projects. We have some human resource officers. We have some faculty. We have people from other state agencies. We've got a variety of individuals on this call, so we're really happy that we're able to launch this today. And again, our session is going to be on how to transfer knowledge to new employees and then sort of prepare this next generation of leaders in a proactive way as we're planning for retirements and promotions and organizational changes. On our agenda today, we've got some succession plan data that I'm going to share with you. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how to develop an L&D plan, and then when you're ready, how to get some futuring teams off the ground that can help you manage any change that's coming to the organization. So let me start off by saying that Lisa Gilroy and I, in 2013, did a Learning Tuesday on succession planning, and we shared data with many people who attended it, and then again, this was archived at that point, about what we look like and what the demographics are. And as you can imagine, none of us realize how old we are. But the reality is, as we see with the next slide, is on the administrative side, 240 people can retire right now. And an additional 250 people will be eligible in the next 5 years. So this is about 40% of our administrative workforce. And on average, we're about 48.5 years. We have about 10 years of service. This is an important number to know because when we talk about people being able to retire now, that means they're eligible for retirement. They have 10 years of service at the RF and they're 55 years of age. If you work for SUNY, you know that similarly, many people can retire from the SUNY system as well soon. And so what we're saying is on the sponsored program side, about 400 people can retire now, 300 will be eligible in 5 years, and this is about 22% of that particular workforce. The average age of our sponsored program staff is 44, with average years of service is 6. And this really equates to about 25% of our workforce will be eligible to retire in the next 5 years. So we've got to get moving, and every time I'm at a meeting, I hear people say, we don't have a program for succession planning at our campus or in our department. But you can. And I think the first thing you have to do is sort of look at the data. So you can see here that most campuses have some red as a bar graph here, but this is the number of people that are eligible to retire, again, within 5 years. So you may see yourself on there. As we look at what that percentage is, it's pretty high in certain campuses where maybe there's only a few RF employees, but they're doing a great amount of work, especially you see in our comprehensive, Plattsburgh, Potsdam, Purchase, Cobleskill, ESF. You know, we've got quite a few people who are eligible. So don't be scared. It's not time to push the panic button, but what we want to do today is just give you a couple of tips on how we can start planning for this change. And on the next couple slides, we talk about the sponsored program folks. Again, as we look at the numbers, we look at Stony Brook and UAlbany and Buffalo State. There seem to be some pretty high numbers at UB as well. So again, these are people that are eligible to retire, and then the percentage gets real high in some of the campuses where we have fewer RF employees, but they're more at the comprehensive campuses. So you can ask us for more detail on that. We have shared with our HROs as well as some OM specific data to your campus, but we're glad to let you use that because that's usually the first piece of the conversation you're going to have with people about how serious we are. You got to look at the numbers. So we wanted to provide the Sponsored Program Management Council, the focus group, with some quick tips on how to start this process. And I like processes that are easy. They're more organic in nature. And so here are a few that we shared. If you got your eye on somebody or a couple people that you think could benefit from learning more about how you are involved in meetings or conference calls, and let's just remember, I think we're trying to mute people's lines here, Jamie, so we can hear a little background noise. That actually sounds like me. Okay, so what we want to be able to do is invite a colleague to attend your next meeting. The RF Central Office would certainly allow for additional people to attend our focus groups. We have a couple, we have a few in the fall, we have a few in the spring. Bring somebody with you. Secondly, professional development plans, which I'm going to show you what one looks like, is really just a commitment to our own development, and whether you're writing it on a napkin or you're typing it on the actual professional development plan, at this point in our careers, all of us should have a professional development plan, even if it only has a couple of items on it, like, hey, I'd like to retire next year. And what that means is that you're really thinking about who else needs to sort of share in the knowledge and understanding of your work. So having a development plan is important. It can become something that sparks some discussion. Here at Central Office, we in the HR department actually share our development plans verbally with each other twice a year. So if one of us says, you know, I'd really like to learn more about how to manage a difficult conversation, or one of us says, you know, I'd like to get in the car and go to Binghamton, we share it with each other so that when we're actually doing it, others can join in, and it's magical because people help each other. So I would say start there if you haven't done anything yet. And then serving on a campus committee, you know, any committee where staff are encouraged to meet with others in a cross-functional way, raise your hand. Just keep saying, hey, I know I don't have a direct line to the provost or to the dean of academic studies, but boy, I'd like to be on a committee. Maybe I could offer something from the fact that I do research administration. So never stop trying to be involved in something outside of your actual work. It really helps with the cross-functional learning. And then join our mentoring program or our leadership academy. All of this is on the RF website, but you'll know that we've got a real commitment to being a learning organization, and we do that through these programs. Many of you that have signed up have been in the programs, and so you know that you can spiral upward in what you do and how you do it, but sometimes you need a bona fide program to help you do that. So both of these programs, again, are on our website. We do public speaking. We do book reviews. Many people just went to the State of the University here on January 22nd to hear the new chancellor provide her vision. So we have lots of opportunities for people to learn. Then having an open chair, which is something you can steal from me, but it's just a concept that I brought to the RF. many years ago that just says where 2 or more people are gathered, there's an open chair for you. And therefore, if I want to learn more about what's happening in our finance department, I would just contact the person who runs those meetings and say, I'd like to open chair one of your meetings. When can you schedule me in? If there's items that are confidential or executive in nature, then I'd be excused from that. But an open chair is just an easy way to kind of get your foot in the door and really do your own learning. So lots of people in their development plans will say, oh, I'd like to open chair a meeting with a particular department, or maybe I'd like to open chair a conference call. That's the type of organizational learning that you can easily adapt to. And boot camps are really great too. When we had so many people leaving here at the RF for early retirement, we knew when they were leaving, and granted we had some time because we had to put together a program that complied with ERISA, and we did have to give notice to individuals, but we had time to put together a boot camp so that the people that were left here to take on the rest of the work, it wasn't, like, oh my God, I can't believe she's gone already. It was, all right, we have 90 days. Every week on Wednesday mornings, we are going to have a different topic whereby many of us are learning what the individual did. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that afterwards, too. So the next slide shows you what a development plan looks like. What are your career aspirations, period? I'm not looking at metrics, milestones, objectives, all that stuff that trips people up, but rather, what are your career aspirations? And they simply can read, I want to be CRA certified. I'd like to go to UB and learn more about the president's initiatives on economic development. It can be those types of things, or it could be I want to take a class. I'd like to have a flexible work schedule 1 day a week so I can attend something. Whatever it is, put it down. We're more likely to actually achieve these by identifying them in writing and sharing them with people. So like I said, something magical happens when we share them. Of course, this development plan is on our website under Learning and Development. Feel free to take it. We actually have a menu that's attached to it that gives you some examples of what you could put in there, just in case people, are a little hesitant because it's so, the white space is so large. So feel free to take it. The other thing that we want to do is make sure, at least on the RF side, now we can do this on the RF side because obviously we're not a state entity. We can actually have these 5 steps that help us identify key positions, the talent that's needed for the positions, assessing who the people are that we have. It's sort of like doing a talent audit, creating development plans, and then setting up a timeline to monitor and evaluate. So as an example, this is pretty standard. So from an organizational development standpoint, you'll see this type of grid, and you don't have to follow it exactly, but it's just something to have, right? It's to say, okay, we've got an OM position, a director position. How long is it that we think they're going to be here? Well, and if when you see the materials in a different format, you'd see that the A, B, and C retention is just, well, someone's going to be here 6 months. We think people have a year. I'm not asking you to, sit with someone and say, when are you retiring? I mean, that would just be a terrible idea. But instead, most people who are getting ready to retire talk about it. So when people are vocal about what their plans are, this is a good time to say, all right, I have a sense of when people are leaving. And then, of course, you've got to identify which positions are critical to your business. And they're going to be everyone, I'm sure. And then you're going to do a little bit of an assessment of like who's ready now, who's ready in a couple of years, and then how are we developing some priorities around succession planning. So that's just a sample of what a grid looks like. The next page helps us plot out our high potentials and our high performers. And again, this is a pretty standard view of a talent audit, and using it just as a guide to say who's sort of ready now because they've got this potential to really step in and do a great job in the future, and who's already there. And then, of course, on the performance side, we know that the 20-70-10 rule shows a bell curve typically, but usually we have about 10% of our folks who are just marginally performing, but 70% of us are in that valued area where we're contributing really at a good rate and our efforts are paying off. And then about 20% of individuals, typically you'll find, are excelling. They're exceeding in what they do and how they do it. So just a talent audit says you're looking at these areas and you're saying, who's got the potential to maybe step in, and what things do I need to do now to get them ready? Do I bring them to the next focus group meeting that I have? Do I introduce them to people? What kind of stakeholder engagement do I continue in? So that just gives you a sense of, again, how we can plot out who the people are and what the positions are. If this interests you, I will offer, again, my name is Kathleen, and send me an email because I'd be glad to work with you in your department, in your campus, to help you get to the point where you can do some of this. Now, if you work for SUNY, you can't quite use that grid, right? So we have to maintain the merit and fitness of the civil service system. So, you're not going to be, not-for-profits can use this type of assessment, but you're going to have a different look, and you're not going to have a grid like this. However, I'd be glad to help you with that, too. I know before Curtis Lloyd left, he did some webinars with folks around the SUNY system on succession planning, so there are some materials still out there for that as well. So now I want to just move into transferring knowledge. So this is really one of the most important elements of a good plan of succession, which is that you're not waiting to the 11th hour and saying, oh my God, I forgot to tell somebody how all this work gets done. It's actually assuming that you're transferring some skills as you're going along. And P.S., here's the secret. All of us who would do knowledge transfer and job rotation, learning other people's jobs. I mean, if we had enough people, this is how we would do it. But of course, you're staffed too thin, so you don't have people in the wings where you can kind of bring them in and say, I want you to learn this, and then I want you to learn that, and then we'll be ready for, the exodus of staff. It doesn't work that way, but it doesn't mean you don't try. And so what we're saying is when you've got people leaving, whether it's 30 days notice, 2 weeks notice, or it's 6 months, there are certain elements towards accelerating the L&D parts of people's jobs. And so Jenna, again, who's not here, who's hopefully very happy being at home with her new baby, did put these slides together. And so she just really thought it was important to look at the awareness of your learning, the knowledge, the skill, and the mastery, and that there's some strategies that we can use. See it, hear it, write it, read it, recite it, practice it twice, and then apply it. When we look at the knowledge transfer strategies, I think the next slide says show it, say it, write it, read it, talk about it, have people try the task while the support is still here, and have them start doing the task on their own. I'll give you an example of this. In fact, I have a little bit more in the back, but Barbara Pell, who was the Human Resource Manager and Affirmative Action Manager, we did know that she was retiring. She was part of the program, and at some point in the fall, we said no more employee relations. They go to Susan Zaffers now. And that's because we had a boot camp every week where we would spend a half hour together because that's all the time that we could afford. And we started seeing what she was working on. We asked her to put together a 3-month desk audit of all the calls she got. But I didn't tell her that as she was leaving. I told her that in the summer. I said, put together a list of the calls you're getting, because we couldn't possibly know all the employee relations and affirmative action issues that were going on. So that's just one example, but it's my example, so that's the one I'm using. We started really transitioning into more of a matrix team so that, like you, we don't have a whole bunch of extra people in the wings waiting to take on the work. We said, you know what, I think more people should be taking on employee relations. So we started a matrix group, and we started transferring knowledge strategies right as soon as we could. So I do it, and you watch. I do it, you help. You do it, I help. You do it, I watch. It's simple but beautiful. It really helps us understand that there is a way to do this. And you, as the manager or the department chair, you don't have to be involved in every part of this, but this particular work does have to happen. And if you only have 2 weeks' notice, because this happens more frequently than not, hey, you know, it's February 1st, my last day is February 14th, and you think there's not enough time to even plan a goodbye party, let alone transfer knowledge. What you have to do is step in and say, here's some material, employee who's leaving. I want you to manage the next 10 working days. And how are you going to transfer the knowledge to so-and-so? And you give that person a mentor. They're the team lead that works for you, that's staying on. They're not the person leaving, and you assign somebody this role. And so 2 weeks is just not enough time to know anything, but for goodness sake, if they're still working and on our payroll, we can expect that people will put together a plan of how this work needs to be done. And maybe the plan is you just want 10 days of, again, a worksheet in Excel indicating what they've done for the previous 2 months. But we have to do something. So that's the worst case scenario. Worst case would be, of course, we have to let somebody go and this is their last day of work. But the best case scenario would be that we have some time, and of course there's time to ask the individual. I have, unfortunately, been working with people who leave rather abruptly for a long time, and I still say, you know, your next 2 weeks are actually going to be what we need you to do, not what you think needs to be done. Because what the exiting employee will say is, you know, I got to wrap up this, that, and the other thing, and that might be new work that you're not so interested in. So make sure that you say, we want to transfer knowledge, there are ways that this can be done, and we want you to manage that and give me a plan on how you're going to do it. So some work shadowing, paired work is a common way for people to spend time together, and this is prior to retirement. But again, that's an easier adjustment. But these strategies work when people are just leaving as well. So making lists of duties, organizing locations and files, shredding what's no longer needed, showing people the location of the virtual and physical files. I know that sounds funny, but sometimes people will leave and you don't actually know where stuff is. So we've had to take trips to the basement and say, could you please point out which boxes you're talking about? Be specific. Creating a weekly schedule that includes routine tasks, ongoing projects, and meetings. Again, this works for people that are leaving in a couple weeks or a month. You can take these materials and use them as you're talking to people. Invite the new person to listen in. If someone's giving you notice, then they ask another person to join the upcoming conference calls, meetings. Anything that the individual is working on is now a shared responsibility with somebody else. And then working side by side in regular intervals, and plans taking longer than normal. Plan on tasks taking longer than normal, which is true, right? So what I always say is that we really don't know how much we miss somebody until 12 or 18 months after they're gone. Because in the beginning, you feel like you've picked up all the priorities, but what you didn't realize was the stuff that they didn't tell you, or the stuff that they were working on with people because they had relationships with somebody in another department that nobody else knows. So just be prepared that, again, in my experience, and some of the research shows 12 to 18 months after someone leaves is when we really notice maybe where some problems are. So transferring a narrative. I like this. A good story combines the explicit with the tacit, the information with the emotion. So stories really enable people to express and comprehend the sticky, context-rich aspects of deep knowledge much more effectively. And that quote we use in some futuring team discussions, but it's really sitting with somebody as they're getting ready to leave and just say, I'd love an hour of your time. You know, I'm going to record some of what you're saying in writing. I want to hear what your days and your weeks are like. Tell me what it feels like to do the work you're doing. Where are some of the challenges? And just relax. Sit with a cup of tea and let them talk with you about what it is that they have enjoyed about the work, but what some of the relationship challenges and some of the hills that they've had to climb over to be successful. And then when it's getting a little too conceptual, you say, and then what? Oh, give me a specific, and then what? And this 1-hour narrative transfer is really meaningful. It doesn't have to just be with you, but you could sit with somebody else and have 2 people listen in on it. You'll get some really good scoop on where the individual wants to make sure that who's ever in their place is successful. We have some stakeholder examples, so there's lots of ways to reach out, but one thing is you always reach out. A lot of my colleagues that are on the call today a few years ago said, hey, Kathleen, when people leave central office, we don't know it. We don't know who their replacement is. We don't even know where your org charts are. And I heard that loud and clear. And so now, of course, our org charts are on the website. But I make sure that departments let stakeholders know when someone's leaving. Even if it's just a couple of days before they're going, it gives people an opportunity to say goodbye to them. So that's like a missed opportunity, of course, and it doesn't look like we're giving good service if we don't tell people when others are leaving. So this is important, and again, email works in that case. I know introducing replacements to people, you can do that through lunches, through having coffee together, sharing news. If you're going to be retired, people want to know when so-and-so is retiring so that they can wish them well. They also want to know that your operations aren't being disrupted and that you're leaving another name of somebody who's actually filling in for that person. And that might be temporary, right? But we always have to assign people to the roles that they have. And we may even say this is a temporary transition. We'll keep you updated for more regular communication, and we haven't hired the person yet. Sometimes you'll get information like, are you going to replace that person? And lots of times you just don't know. I mean, here at the RF, at central office, we said we're going to keep the staff that we have. We're not going to hire any new individuals at central office, and we're going to assess it after 6 months and see how is it going. What kind of feedback are we getting? The red flags show quickly when you're not doing a good job, right? You start getting calls from your customers. And so we know in a couple of situations that people are saying, I'm not getting a good response. We're making sure that we manage that. So the important thing is that you're talking about the transition with time frames and whether or not somebody's taking over the work. You can do some video captures. I talked about the narrative exchange, but there's also WebEx. Right now, this is a free service to most of us, and you can capture some examples of what needs to be transferred along. You can review videos with a new person. And again, you're putting it back on the individual who's leaving, and you say, listen, you've been responsible for an awful lot. Let's chunk it down. I want you to do a video on accounts payable. I want you to do a WebEx on procurement. I want somebody else to know from you in your voice and with your documentation what you've been doing. So this works. As you can see here, you could be using a WebEx, and again, you ask the individual who's leaving to manage this, to put together, 10 slides to talk about how they do something that you're really worried about. And again, you can review the video with new people that come, and you can record this even with your cell phone, and you don't even have to do it on WebEx. But WebEx is easy and inexpensive. So then mentoring and coaching, so you want to make sure as we're replacing people with new hires with maybe less experience in research administration or never worked in higher education before, that they get mentored immediately. So our mentoring program is one. You have many informal programs on your campuses as well, but our mentoring program is meant exactly for this. It's to match up a new hire with somebody who has some experience that can help them with their new job. So while they're not going to get into, where the bathroom is, we wouldn't be able to do that virtually for new hires, but we could certainly help them by assigning them to somebody in the system that wanted to be a mentor. You'd be surprised that we have 856 new hires at the RF a year. And that's a lot of new people. So while our program isn't that robust, we can help. We're on a system right now. It's sort of a school, an academic calendar year. So the mentoring program, we have 45 people in it right now. That will begin again in September. They'll be graduating in June. But just think of that. If you've got somebody new, I think they'd like this program. And we have very few central office people in the program now. It's mostly campuses. It's populated by campuses. So coaching, starting a mentoring person right now is important, and then leaving a list of resources that they can go to. And certainly, as people are leaving the RF or in roles that are really critical to you, you could ask them, would they be willing to stay on in an advisory capacity for a couple of months and have maybe a few phone calls a week? So we're not paying somebody, to do this, but just like in a volunteer way, would they be willing to be available to answer some questions a couple of times, let's say 4 times a month? And most people say yes. Only once in my work experience did somebody say no. I think they were mad at me, so I think that's why they said no. So think about that, and then a quick desk reference guide. So again, this is something you say to the person, hey, I'm really glad that you've got projects that you want to tie up, but what I really need you to do is a reference guide of the work that you've been doing. And whether the person's here for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, this is a really good way to make sure that you got step-by-step instructions for each person. And having a helpful one-pager with links to share all existing online policies, procedures, and training videos. I know some people say they do calendars. They'll just literally mock up a calendar and put down when things are due and when they prepare to have them done. And that simple reference of calendaring can just be enough to sort of do the brain dump that, the individual needs to do. And I think you get what I'm saying here. You're in charge of the person's transition. Assuming they're leaving, and you've got a couple weeks, this is a good way to transfer knowledge. If you've got a retiree, perfect. You've got a little bit more time, and then you can be sure that all of this work is getting done. And then lastly, I just want to mention that there's some e-learning processes that you can use, identifying what e-learning is necessary. I know a lot of us are really trying to go paperless and focus more on, any kind of virtual learning that we can. So there's online courses. They can be identified and put in the development plan. Webinars, seminars, workshops. Our hope is to have another symposium next year in the spring, so in 2019. That'll be a great learning opportunity for new staff that will be having workshops that'll be really applicable to the wide-ranging work that the Research Foundation does, from clinical trials work to processing travel payments. So that's just another venue that we have for accelerating learning. And then micro-knowledge is available to many people. And then we have, SPA fundamentals. We have Learning Tuesdays. I mentioned Learning Tuesdays because I guess today we had a great one on audit. But they're all archived. So again, on our website under Learning and Development, we have over 70 recorded sessions. And I really think we touched on most all important topics, from ethics, compliance, to transactions and human resources. I mean, there really isn't much we haven't done a Learning Tuesday on. So again, there's a lot of things that we can offer new people to transfer the knowledge. And I just want to tell you one quick thing that we have, again, as part of our comprehensive learning and development initiative. These demo and discusses, 1 hour every month, based on topics that UCRC, the HROs, the SPMC, the OM said were really important. We have a session scheduled many months in 2018. But what we also heard was, boy, as a new employee at the RF, those 856 people, both working in sponsored side and the administrative side, boy, wouldn't it be great if there was some learning for them that we didn't have to do, repeat it campus by campus. So I think you're going to be really happy. We'll be rolling out to many people to look at in February and March a new web-based, I'm here 30 days, these are the things I need to learn. I'm here 60 days, these are the things I need to learn. 120 days, and so on. And we're trying to do it really by functional area. So we have a design team that put together, I think, what is going to be a really good onboarding program for new hires. And of course, existing staff can use it as well. So that's sort of my learning and development spiel on how we can transfer knowledge, but just be sure that we're the type of organization that says, of course we can do something. We can't just feel defeated by the fact that people are leaving, new people are coming. We have to be able to get energized by it and say there are some things we can do. And of course, this material is available for you. So pick and choose pieces of it that make sense. Now I'm just going to move into futuring teams. So when you know that change is coming, all right, and whether it's 3 individuals or it's 13 individuals, you can put together a group of individuals to actually plan for this knowledge transfer and succession planning. And so what we say is the defining the future is the art, science of identifying and evaluating possible future events. Futuring paints a clear picture of specific destination at which the RF wants to arrive within a certain time frame. So I introduced futuring teams to our leadership staff, and then I just started talking about how to do it. And what we did was we invited everybody that worked here, and this is a small crowd, so there's 113 people, to actually come to a kickoff. And during that kickoff, I said, here's the timeline. We're going to identify who's going to be on a futuring team, and we're going to have a kickoff on the 28th of August. I think we can show the next one. The 28th of August, and in a really short time period, 3 weeks, we are going to get together 3 times. And that's it. We're not going to spend a day and a half or a year and a half trying to figure out what our business needs are. We're going to do it in 3 meetings. We launched the futuring teams. We said, this is what it's going to look like. We answered as many questions as we could, and we said, the whole point of having this is that departments are going to be impacted. Teams need to be inclusive and have individuals populating them that can actually help inform what things we have to do. So as an example, you can see what we did as our meeting dates, and then by September 11th, we did recommendations to the leadership team. And I started off with a kickoff, we had a check-in, and then a final check-in. And every futuring team, which ended up being every department. So compliance, human resources, legal, sponsored programs, finance, we all launched futuring teams, but we were all together one day, and then we met and we said, all right, and the next slide sort of shows you what our assignment was, which was, okay, become familiar with your org charts, make sure you know what the job descriptions are and what your department plans may be, discuss the implications of the vacancies on the workload and on the culture, because a lot of individuals who left here were people that were well thought of and colleagues to many of you, and we couldn't just sweep that under the rug and say, all will be okay. You know, we've got person X filling in. It doesn't work that way. People who maintain working relationships, that usually means that there's a familiarity and a comfortableness calling people, even if it's not their job to do it. So we had to identify that, talk about how we could manage that, who's going to fill in and be the primary liaison. We had to identify which tasks could be reassigned to other people, what we should stop doing. We actually put forward a call with our stakeholders. All of us as department heads talked to people on campuses, and some of the 2 things that we thought we should stop doing, we heard loud and clear from campuses, don't you dare stop doing that. I need that service. So this is why you want to do this quickly, but you also want to be thorough about, you know, and in many cases I can think of a model on a campus where you have a primary liaison to a department. So if you're getting ready to make adjustments and you think you're going to have to downsize or right size, you'd want to get their input, especially as you've come up with some ideas on how to change activities or who else is going to be doing the work. You definitely want to get that input. It made a difference in what we were able to do. And then identifying which positions can be eliminated, which positions can be replaced, which ones we do an open search for. And then what we did was we asked those futuring teams to put it all together, and then it was presented at a leadership team meeting. And the reality was we figured out a way for a temporary solution for 6 months to manage a transition, and then we're going to review it again without hiring additional people. But we had an accelerated learning and development plan on transferring the knowledge to others. We really went at it, and that part was successful mostly. So again, use this material if it helps you as you're thinking about things that you might have to do in the future. I think the next, I think we can go ahead and keep going. I already did that one. Thank you. Leadership responsibilities. So then we really wanted to make sure as a group that we continued to give service to the campus. That was excellent. Development opportunities for staff, promote where we can, use input through futuring teams, and view the structure and changes holistically so that we could benefit the entire organization, meaning our system, and then make adjustments to workflow to really minimize backfills and to explain to people, even though somebody is leaving with 30 years of service, that doesn't mean we're going to be able to replace the individual. And just having all those conversations up front with people was helpful. If anything around futuring interests you or you want to do something similar, please let us know, because I'd be glad to share material with you. Then the second leadership responsibility slide is around, again, what activities can be cascaded to other staff? Who's assuming a significant workload increase? You know, is somebody taking on a whole nother department now? And if so, do we have to classify and comp that? Because, you know, we would want to make sure that we were compliant with Fair Standard Labor Act. We want to make sure that we're not overloading somebody. And typically, you know, it takes about 3 years to learn your job, and mastering that, you know, could take much longer. So you're not going to reassign, you know, your new staff a whole nother department if they're not really mastering the current job they're in. And it also takes teams at least 3 years to become really expert as a group from a performance standpoint. So you're gonna see the ebbs and flows with this, of course. And then departments create a knowledge of transfer activity. So we've talked about the work shadowing, reference guides, desktop processes, procedure updates, paired work, knowledge, having a repository for all new information. That's one thing that we did in employee relations, is that we decided to set up a drive on our system to just start sharing our work as it related to some of the changes around facilities, some of the changes in human resources, so that we could just see other people's materials and really know. So you have to have that conversation. You have to be that granular and say, I don't know where any of your work is. So we better sit together in a conference room and look at the drive and see what's in there and start transferring documents into there that we think are applicable. We designed folders. We had to do a lot of work, and we did that throughout the building. But I'll tell you, it made a difference, because when we talk about knowledge transfer and we're preparing for succession, we make assumptions about what other people know, and I really had to test a few of those and realize I didn't know a lot. So sitting together with your group and literally looking at a screen and putting materials into a drive is one of the first things you want to do. And again, the person who's leaving or the people who you're getting ready to look at taking on another job, they could be sitting there with you. So this is just an example of something that we did. We put together, as I mentioned, a 3-month boot camp, and we had meetings every week. And we started off with FMLA, then we went into paid family leave, then we did OFCCP audit, and so on. And after the first one, we, of course, invited campus staff to attend these. And what we found out was that they started getting really popular as topical areas that many people on the campuses wanted to be involved in. So we started doing webinars, and we invited everybody. So just, again, to give you a sense of what one department did. So I'm going to actually just go to the last slide so we can show you what the next demo and discuss activity is. It's going to be on sponsored programs and technology transfer and finance 101. It'll be 1 hour on February 13th. Jamie Frakes will moderate like she did today, and she will also send out information to everybody. I think we have like 3 reminders that go out prior to the event so that we can get a good sense of who's attending. And hopefully you saw that it was easy, and we used Informs to set it up. So I wanted to just let you know that that's happening, but we also have a few minutes. So if anybody on the call would want to say something, we're here.
Denise, her additional title was more like an extra service function. But
we can hear you. I'm sorry, I'm not sure who's on the phone, but we can hear you. I don't think that was a question for Kathleen. But everybody, we are on mute. Okay.
We took them off so they could ask questions.
Okay, so we've taken you off mute so you can ask questions. So just keep that in mind, we can hear you in case you want to say something negative about me. Who's got a question or a thought or something you're doing similar?
Kathleen, this is Sandy Mosier in Brockport.
Hi there.
Hi. Are we going to be able to get the slides that you used today so that we can sit down? I know it's going to be archived, which is great, but sometimes it's easier to have paper in front of you when you're sitting down with your leadership staff.
Yep, all of the presentation slides that were presented today will be sent to everybody that was registered. So if you were registered, you'll get a copy of this. If not, you will be able to download it from our website once they're posted on the website. You can download them from there.
But at least today, will they get these today or tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay, so either today or tomorrow, Sandy, you'll get the presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Come on, someone's going to ask me a question. I'm going to look like the worst first demo and discuss presenter.
Hi, Kathleen. This is Kathy from New Paltz.
Oh, hi.
How are you?
Hello. Good, thank you.
So this is more of a comment and then a question to follow. So I was actually fortunate enough to participate in some of your boot camps from the HR perspective. And, I thought it was very helpful to me as well as could see what you were doing with your team there. What about the other departments? Did they do similar activities? And if so, how did that work out?
Okay. Well, I can tell you this. Only a few departments were really impacted by the VRP, so our sponsored program staff, finance, human resources, and then, of course, strategy and planning because Kathy left. Kathy Kazluga. So I do know that on the sponsored program side, there were many activities like this that they were using with the employees that were there and the employees that were leaving to put together an L&D plan. I don't think it was as specific as mine. And in finance, I know that the directors, along with Emily Kunchala, the CFO, did really similar activities like this, but they didn't. We're the only ones that I think used a matrix team approach, which is why we had to do a boot camp so that everybody was brought up to speed. So, but I do know that the other departments did something similar where they were transferring knowledge and spending lots of time doing some activity as well as looking at time studies. Like that. Yeah, thank you. Did you have a comment too? Oh, you said you liked the boot camp.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Kathy. Anything else? Are you going to use any of this material? Oh, go ahead.
It's Tom from Binghamton. When's the next leadership development group starting off?
Yeah, the next Leadership Academy is going to launch July 1, 2018.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so if no other questions, feel free to contact me if you want some specifics around your campus data. If you think I could come and help you or coach you in some of those conversations you're going to have about who's leaving and when we're preparing for this, I'd be glad to. We're really excited that there's such an interest in doing this. And, you know, this is just a perspective that we have. You probably have even better ideas. But feel free to use our materials and then reach out to any of us here in HR if you'd like some additional assistance with it. But at the very least, I'm so happy that 106 of you signed up. That means it's on your mind and that you want to plan for it. So thank you for joining us. And Jamie, thank you. And we'll be in touch with everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Oh, thanks, Catherine.